Hello there, this is Deborah Arca with the Pathos Book Club, and my guest this morning is Judith Valente, the author of a new meditative memoir called Atchison Blue, A Search for Silence, a Spiritual Home, and a Living Faith. And Judith is a religion reporter for PBS, the PBS national program Religion and Ethics Weekly. She's also a speaker, a retreat leader, and the author of 2 books of poetry. Related to our conversation this morning, she became a Benedictine oblate in 2013. Good morning, Judith.
Good morning to you.
You are actually in Chicago, I imagine, but your story, Atchison Blue, takes place in a town called Atchison, Kansas. And this lovely book is about your experiences traveling back and forth to this monastery in Atchison, Kansas. And so I'd love for you to start telling us first how you ever arrived at that particular monastery in Atchison, Kansas.
Well, looking back on things now, Deborah, it seems as if I was fated to go to that monastery because I arrived there in a very coincidental and roundabout way. I went there to do a poetry program. And as you read in the book, I had a pretty life-changing experience there that I never forgot.
So what happened in that very first experience that that changed the direction of your life so much that you decided to make these regular pilgrimages over a 3-year period?
Well, it was a very startling experience. When I arrived to give the retreat on poetry, it was at the end of a long series of programs and presentations that my husband and I were giving across the country. We were doing these presentations on the weekends, all the while working our day jobs, I as a correspondent for PBS, he as an Illinois Circuit Court judge. And so I arrived at the monastery, totally exhausted. Someone who's trying to help people live more attentively and attuned to life. And here I was in this kind of mindless state of mind myself. And the morning that I was to give the retreat, I found myself sitting alone in the chapel at Mount St. Scholastica. And silence just seemed to saturate the whole room. And there was a beautiful streaming sunlight coming through these blue stained glass windows that are in the chapel. And I happened to look up in front of me at the stained glass window that was directly ahead of me. And it was Saint Benedict with outstretched arms. And around him were these words in Latin, Omni tempore silentio debent studere. And so I reached back into my 6 years of Latin in Catholic schools, and I was able to do a rough translation. At all times, cultivate silence. And so I was sitting there, and the paradox that I had been living just sort of hit me right in the face, that I had been talking and talking and talking, trying to help other people live a more contemplative life, when what was missing in my own life were moments of silence and solitude when I could simply listen and be. And so I remember sitting there in this chapel, and tears started to stream down my face, and it was such a powerful experience.
Yeah. Now you have grown up Catholic.
Yes.
But I imagine there was a different experience that you had towards God, towards these sisters than you had grown up with. I mean, how did the religion of the monastery differ from the religion of your youth, adulthood?
It's a very good question, and it's a very deep question. I had a very good experience in Catholicism. I went to a wonderful Catholic high school for girls where I got this tremendous education. We took Latin and Greek and had literature and foreign languages. All this was required. And the sisters were there. They were Sisters of Charity out of Convent Station, New Jersey. And I went to their school in Jersey City, New Jersey. And these sisters saw something in me. They saw some sort of talent in me. And they really encouraged me to be a writer. So I had this wonderful experience of Catholicism. When I moved to Chicago for my career, when I joined the Wall Street Journal, I was originally in the Chicago bureau. Again, I had a fabulous parish here in downtown Chicago. So I had this wonderful experience. And then, of course, our church began to take this turn and become, very negative, very interested in dividing people between, the insiders and the outcasts and, who was a sinner and who wasn't a sinner, and just focusing on telling people what they couldn't do rather than, this wonderful experience that I had of the gospel message in my high school and in my Catholic college, St. Peter's University in Jersey City, New Jersey, and also at my parish in Chicago. So by the time I arrived at Mount St. Scholastic, I was feeling very despondent over what was happening in my church, the church that had been so integral to my life. And of course, as a reporter, I had to cover the clergy sex abuse scandal, which was just, devastating to Catholics. I arrived there at this moment when I'm feeling very low about this faith that had been so important to my life, so significant. And I remember meeting sisters and this tremendous sense of community that they had. This, you could see that they really cared for one another. They had something there. I knew that there was something there that I wanted more of in my own life. The first thing you experience when you go to a monastery is the prayer life, because they just, welcome people to come to their community prayers. And they sing the Psalms, and so you have this beautiful sound of all these women's voices praying as one. And what also impressed me were their prayers. I remember them on that particular day praying for the people on death row who would die that week, and all victims of violent crimes and their families, and praying for the President of the United States, and praying for all the world leaders. And it just made me feel that there was a sense of comfort that these women were up before dawn every day and in there, 3 and 4 times a day praying for our world. And it reminded me of something Thomas Merton wrote when the great Trappist monk and spiritual writer, that he wrote when he visited his monastery for the first time. He said, "Now I know what has been holding the world together and keeping it from cracking into pieces. It is the prayers of this monastery and others." Mm-hmm. And that's how I felt. Mm-hmm. These women have something to teach me. Yeah. That's very important. That's been missing in my life.
I was really struck by the age of the women. There were, I think the oldest one was 100 or...
Well, Sister Lillian's sister lived to 104.
Right.
At that time, she was only 99, I think.
Yeah. we talk so much in our culture about, our fear of aging and how we battle aging and, all the different antidotes to not getting older. And I'm thinking, I think we all need to just maybe go hang out and live in a monastery, because these women seem to be very much alive still into their, very late years of life. So.
I think it's a couple of things. I think it's that sense of community where there's always somebody there trying to build you up. And the notion that you're going to be cared for until you die, so they don't live with that stress that many of us do. Where are we going to go? Are we going to go into assisted living? Are we going to go into a nursing home? No, they're going to be cared for by the monastery. So that's one thing. But here's the other thing that I think is really important. It's this strong desire in these women to be of service until they cannot possibly walk or speak anymore. And that really said something to me. Mm-hmm. And in my own life, I want to, that's the way I want to be. I want to seek those ways to be of service until I can't possibly be of service anymore.
Yeah. And I think you also paint such a real picture of these women. I think so many of us think about nuns and people that live in monasteries, and we have our stereotype of what these women do. And here you are telling stories about these women that are sitting around or drinking a glass of wine or dancing.
Peppermint schnapps.
Yeah, peppermint schnapps the one night. And and learning African dancing. So there's a real element of play, and I think you call it leisure, in their lives that seems really important too, and something that seemed to be very much a gift to you. And I would imagine many of us who kind of have lost that that important part of our lives, which is to just rest and play.
That's so important, Deborah. That's another really thing that I took away, and that was one of the things they taught me was it's okay to be where you are. I sense we're probably similar people. We're both journalists, and we're always, well, what's the next story, and what's my next career move, and am I in the right place, or should I be applying to this bigger place or this better place? And they helped me to see it's just enough to live your life and love the people you love. And that was so freeing for somebody like me who's such a, an overachiever and always feeling like I got to do more, better.
What do you feel like the greatest gift you received from these women at this monastery in Kansas?
I'm only pausing because there were so many.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a Benedictine word, a monastic word, conversatio.
Right.
Conversatiorum is a vow that they take, and it translates roughly as conversion of life. But they taught me that it doesn't mean this, like huge, big, startling thing, like Teresa of Avila seeing these visions of Jesus and this. Just this, the lights coming down from the heavens. It's not that. It's this day-to-day struggle to be who you are, to be the kind of person that God wants us to be. And Sister Thomasita Homan, she described conversatio as a constant turning, a continuous conversation with life. And I remember at the very beginning, I told her I was so angry with myself because I wanted to be like the sisters. I wanted to be patient and I wanted to be compassionate and kind. And, I would lose my temper with my beautiful husband, my wonderful husband. And I would get impatient with people and at work and things like that. And I said, well, why can't I live conversatio in my everyday life? And she said, well, that's it. You are living conversatio. It's the struggle. That's the conversatio. And see, that gave me hope that, I don't have to be perfect every minute of my life. I just have to be human and I have to be aware of the struggle. And so I think that was the biggest thing, that understanding of what is real conversion. It's not this sudden life-changing thing, but it's this, day to day living your life, changing by increments.
Right. So I know that was one of your big questions too, is how am I going to live this life outside of the monastery? Is it even possible? So now you have written this book, you have completed your pilgrimages. I'm not sure, maybe you're still going back now and then, I imagine.
Oh yes.
But how is it going now? How is what you received still living in you and still forming you?
Well, I think I know how to pause now. I would just go until, my husband would say, until I practically dropped, until something stopped me, a cold or the flu or something. And now I know how to pause, and I know how to. There's something else I talk about in the book. How do we make of our days one extended prayer? And I know that I don't live in a monastery, so I can't stop 4 times a day for community prayers. I don't have a community to do that with. But I can pause during my days. And not only can I pause, but I can look at what I'm doing in my life, whether it's interviewing somebody for PBS or cooking or washing the dishes. I can approach that with a prayerful attitude and try, how do I make my whole day a prayer?
It's a lovely, lovely book. So many stories. It's so much wisdom in here from your time living and talking and interviewing with these sisters. So Atchison Blue, now at the Pathos Book Club. So please come and check it out.